Welcome back. COVID-19 has affected almost every aspect of our lives. So, here with answers to common legal questions that is affecting our families and us is lawyer Lil Coodin. Hi, Lily.
Hi.
So, Lily, thanks for chatting with us again. As Lainey mentioned, there's been a lot of talk we're hearing about the divorce rate being on the rise in many places in the world, including China and the US and the UK. I myself know some people who have been reconsidering their relationships in light of being quarantined together for lengthy periods of time. So if somebody wanted to start in the initiation process of having a divorce, what do they need to know?
Yeah. So it's sort of like I'll take you in sickness and in health, but not necessarily in isolation because it is a lot. And we have heard reports about spiking rates around the country, around the world. And we wonder whether Canada will follow suit. So it can be hard to think about getting divorced when we're being told stay home as much as possible. But the good news is that in Canada, you can be considered separated even if you're living under the same roof. So, what you want to do is start working toward these indications that show that you no longer want to be in a relationship with the other person. Maybe you move to a separate bedroom or open a separate bank account. Anything that shows this intention not to be in a relationship any longer. If you have divorce proceedings that are underway, you may find that they are a bit delayed because courts in general are not running at full capacity right now. They're running for urgent matters only. It's also important to note that if you are the victim of any kind of domestic violence, do reach out for help. Don't hesitate to call the police, call a family lawyer, because you will be able to get help even in this time.
So, Lily, let's talk about custody and children. So, most custody agreements probably established before the pandemic. And so, if you're a parent and you find yourself in a situation where you're not really happy with the level of isolation that the other parent is observing, and you don't feel safe sending your kids over, what are you supposed to do in this situation?
Yeah, this is a real challenge. And the guidance that we've gotten from the courts so far is that in general, they want to see custody agreements staying the same. In other words, COVID-19 is not in and of itself a reason to change custody agreements or to keep the kids away from one parent. That is really difficult, though, if you have concerns about the level of self isolation of one parent, or maybe that parent is a healthcare worker. In these cases, it may be a good idea to try to speak with your co parent, or if you only communicate through lawyers, to speak with your lawyer to see whether there is some common ground that can be reached, maybe a set of guidelines that you both adhere to make sure that you're comfortable. If in the end you have real concerns, you can try to go before a judge and to have your custody agreement changed. It just may take time.
When I was younger, my parents were divorced. I used to spend the summers in Hong Kong with my ma. So I'm thinking about the parents who don't live in the same province, let's say, not even an international situation, but in Canada, crossing borders. Your custody agreement says that, you need to deliver the children to a different province, but there are travel guidelines and restrictions right now. So what's the answer there?
Yeah, it can be really challenging as we've seen a lot of provinces close their borders, so to speak. The good news is that in general, this does not apply to child custody agreements. So if you were crossing a border to drop off your kids to your co-parent, let's say, you should be exempted. It is a slightly different story when it comes to international borders, particularly with the United States. We have seen the border closed. Restrictions have been eased somewhat for the purpose of family reunification. But the important thing to remember is that if you go and drop off your kids in the United States, when you come back, there is a 14-day self-isolation or quarantine period that is required. So you have to factor that into your plans because there will be 2 weeks on the other end when you have to be in self-isolation.
Let's talk about child support payments, because I'm thinking of people who've either had their salary reduced or are out of work entirely in light of COVID. So obviously their child support payment amounts were set before the pandemic. So what happens if they can't make their payments?
Yeah, this is a really difficult situation that a lot of people find themselves in, either because they can't pay or because they're on the receiving end and all of a sudden they're not getting payments or they're getting reduced payments. So again, the guidance that we are being given is that payments should remain the same other than in exceptional circumstances. So if you have savings to rely on, you may want to dip into your savings in order to make those payments. Otherwise, we just want to see the lines of communication open. If you can't make a payment because you've been laid off, for example, you should be communicating in whatever way you can with your co-parent or with your family responsibility office. There's a body in every province that's responsible for enforcing your payments. And you want to make sure that you're not just missing these payments without telling anyone, because you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. The ideal case is if you can reach some sort of agreement to defer payments, pay at a different time of month during this temporary period of COVID, with the idea being that the scheduled payments would go back to normal when it's all done.
Let's talk about the housing market. The value of many homes may not be what it was 5 months ago because of the pandemic. So if you're going through a separation and you need to be bought out, how do you navigate what's fair and legal?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, you count on a certain value that your house will attract in order to kind of think about what you may get when you equalize your net family value when you divorce. In other words, the amount of money you each take out of the marriage. And something like COVID-19 can throw a real wrench into those plans because all of a sudden, depending on where you live in the country, your house may be worth a lot less than you thought. So there are a few options. You could decide with your with your partner, your co-owner of the house, maybe we'll hang on to it and rent it out for a year. But a lot of the time, especially in the case of divorce, we like to see people make a clean break where they don't end up owning a house together and, have to go on communicating and sharing this asset going forward. So in those cases, you may have the option of buying someone out at a price that is more affordable than it was before. So it really depends on what's going to work for your situation. Speak with your family lawyer, speak with your spouse or your ex, and see what arrangement you can make.
So a lot of people are thinking about wills right now. So what happens in this case where you can't really go to a lawyer's office per se to get the copies witnessed in person? Like how are we doing the workarounds, or what's the best one?
Yeah. Wills are one of those things where we have very stringent requirements around witnessing. We want to make sure that there's not some imposter going to a lawyer's office pretending to be you and leaving all of your assets to them. So there's good reason to have these stringent requirements, but it does pose a challenge in the time of physical distancing. The good news is that you can do a lot of the work up front with a lawyer over the phone or by video conference. In addition, in Ontario and British Columbia, there have been new rules put in place for the period of COVID-19 when you can have your will witnessed by teleconference. So that removes a major barrier in a lot of people's way. In other provinces and territories, you just have to adhere to the advice of public health. You could wear masks, you could use your own pen, you could keep 6 feet apart, but it is very important to have a will, and the pandemic shouldn't stand in your way.
Lily, as always, thank you so much for this great information.
Thank you.
A recap of what we've discussed will be up on our website after the show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.